Hello and welcome back to my channel where I like to have fun with all things beauty while also being critical about what I accept into my collection. Today is the bronzer and contour declutter video. So fortunately, this is the smallest section of my collection, so hopefully this won't be too long, but there are definitely bronzers and contours in here that are just taking up space. So I do want to get rid of them, even though I'm not out of room. And I also thought I would take it as an opportunity to talk about some of my favorites and why they've earned a place in my collection and who I might recommend them for. So to start, I should say my skin tone is light, medium, neutral, slightly leaning cool. So a lot of the bronzers that are going to appeal to me are ones that lean slightly pinker. So have more of a rosy undertone and less of an orange or yellow warm undertone. So, you know, a lot of these bronzer ranges in particular have both. You know, they'll have warm and cool undertones in their selection. To make it a little bit easier to break all of this down, I'm going to start with contours, and then I'm going to go into the things that are considered brontours, so sort of contours, sort of bronzers, somewhere in the middle, and then finish up with my favorite and least favorite bronzers. So I guess I'll start with my favorite contour right now, which is the Sephora contour. You know, I bought these both during the last Sephora sale because of curiosity. This was the grayest leading contour that I had really ever seen, and I was just curious about it. You know, it answered my curiosity in that this is definitely too gray for me. But you know, I think this would work on somebody who is fairer and cooler than I am. You know, I guess this is the more common contour shade. It's gray leaning, but there's just a little bit more brown. And you know, I had used contours like this before, but I had never really used a contour like this. So, you know, it's funny because as gray as it looks, when it's blended out, it doesn't look as gray on the skin. That being said, it's a little bit too gray. You know, I have used it for sure on its own as a contour, and it's more noticeable than I would prefer. That being said, both of these blend out beautifully. You know, they're nothing super special, but you know, what I want most from my contour is to not be noticeable. You know, to me, an undetectable contour is a good contour. So I want something that blends in seamlessly and sort of disappears. And these do that. So, you know, these deliver contour very well. Again, I like shade 2 better than shade 1, but depending on your skin tone, I think they're a good contour range, and they're certainly very affordable. So the next one on my list as a contour that I've been reaching for every day is this Westman Atelier in Biscuit. This is definitely one that can be used as a bronzer. I think they even call it a bronzer, but to me, it's just cool enough. And it has that little bit of a rosy undertone, so it's just very at home on my skin. I really will use either one of these as a contour because they both blend out and they're undetectable. So these are my two favorite contours, definitely, like by a long shot. I am going to compare the Westman Atelier to this Makeup by Mario contour stick. This really highlights how cool tone the Westman Atelier is. This is very similar. To me, the formulas of both of these are very similar, and they're both good, you know? They both blend really well without blending away, and they look really good on the skin. You know, I prefer the little bit of a pinkier undertone, but this is very neutral. The Makeup by Mario certainly is not orange in any way. So it's a very neutral, easygoing contour stick. I haven't been in the habit of using it that much recently, but I've gone through phases with this, and it's a solid formula. I guess I might as well also swatch this, the Skin Enhancer. This is definitely more luminous. And I have this in shade light medium. I do reach for this because this blends, you know, it's just lighter. It's lighter overall on the skin. I will use this to, you know, I hate to say enhance my skin, but it does. It leaves a luminosity behind that is just very hydrated looking and, you know, youthful and summery. And, you know, as you can see here, it does not have a lot of pigment in it. So you can blend it until it's deep or light enough to get the color that you're hoping to get out of it. So it's like, I don't know, it's a really versatile formula, and I just like it. You know, these are all things that I would repurchase if something were to happen to them, because I use them all, and especially with summer coming up, I'm happy to have all of these. I will say, because I have this, I am not interested in the newest, I don't think they're calling it a bronzer, but the deepening shade, whatever, the one with the doe foot and the pump applicator, that looks cool, but I'm not in need of a product like that, because that liquid formula, it's just, I don't know, I feel like between these two especially, like, my needs are covered. And to me, a product that was more liquidy than that would be harder to work with, and I just, you know, I'm not going to ever reach for something like that when I have other things that are easier to use and more effective. So, you know, I could be wrong. Obviously, I don't have that formula, but from everything I've seen, that's the biggest reason I don't want it. Another liquid is this contour wand, the Charlotte Tilbury. This is very neutral. It's a little bit cooler than the Neutral Makeup by Mario. I've bought 2 of these because I liked it so much. Unfortunately, when I ran out of the first one, I was waiting for a Sephora sale to repurchase it. So I had to go without it for several months, and I replaced it. You know, in that amount of time, I just found other products that worked just as good. So by the time I got this again, I had like moved on mentally, but I do really like this contour. If I'm in a hurry, this blends super fast, and it works for me as a contour and a bronzer. You know, I will say, I think it can get annoying to hear people talk about really warm tone things as contour, because traditionally it has to be cool tone gray to create a shadow. You know, a contour is a shadow, and that is cool tone gray. But I think in real life, I think you can get some of that with at least a neutral bronzer. It can warm up the skin where it's placed to warm up the skin, but it can also create a little bit of dimension. You know, I'm not so much of a purist in that I don't think it has to be one or the other, but I do understand why people separate the two, and I think they get confused too often, and people need to understand that if it's not creating a shadow, it's not really a contour. But, you know, so I guess, you know, in that way, it's not really a contour, but it works effectively as that. You know, there are so few things in my collection that I've ever repurchased. If I have repurchased it, it means I really like it. Another repurchase is this, the Film Star Bronze Glow from Charlotte Tilbury. This is my second one. I will throw this away after today, but I was holding on to it because it's like the first pan I've ever seen. So I was really proud of that, and I'm never going to use the highlighter, so for me to keep it for that would be silly. This product I really like to use right after my contour. The contours I use do blend very well, and this is almost undetectable, but to me that's the beauty of it. This bridges the gap between my contour and my bronzer. It just makes everything on my cheek blend together seamlessly. So I never want to be without this. Now, do I think if I were to do my makeup one day and forget this, do I think it would be noticeable? No, I don't. I don't think it's that, I don't think it makes that big of a difference. As you can see, it's super light, but I do think it makes a very subtle difference, and I think it helps everything blend together well, and I just rather have it than not have it. Okay, another item that I do really like, but I certainly wouldn't drop everything and run out and buy, is this Saie Sun Melt. I would say, unlike the Makeup by Mario, this is more of a bronzer. It has a little bit more pink to it, but it is warmer overall. So this is really, yeah, it can be sculpting, but it's more of a bronzer than a contour. And I like it. You know, it's not super revolutionary. It feels a lot like the Mario Skin Enhancer. It's very emollient, but it does dry down eventually. And, you know, even though I'm not in the habit of using this recently, I do really like this product, and it is one that I would repurchase. I guess now I'll talk about my favorite bronzer. So currently my favorite bronzer is the McGrath Labs in Nude Honey. I don't love this blush, but I really like this bronzer because it's just so easy to use. It has a little bit of a cooler undertone, and it's just, I can just blend it and go so fast. Like, it doesn't lay down too much pigment, it lays down just enough. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like the Goldilocks of bronzers for me. You know, I always tend to look for rosy tone bronzers because that's what looks natural on me, but they're not all created equal. Like, that's the reason I bought this Gucci. I got this in shade 2. Looking back, I should have got shade 1 because this is just a little bit too deep, and I have to be careful. I have to use very big brushes with this that are very diffused because it can stamp. If I even attempt to use a smaller brush with this, wherever I first touch the brush to my face, it stamps and it becomes like really difficult to blend. So I need to like diffuse it on the brush first, and then I can use it no problem. And part of that is the shade being too dark. I think if it was a little bit lighter, it wouldn't do that as noticeably, but I can very easily make the shade work. But I do think 1 would have been more up my alley. I tend to struggle with shades like this because I'm in the middle. I am light, medium, neutral, but I am closer to light than medium. So a lot of times I'm put in this position where I don't know which way to go. I'm almost never happy with the lightest shade of anything, but a lot of times the next step up is just a little bit too big of a leap. So I don't know. I've been able to make this work, and it's still one of my favorite bronzers because of the undertone in it. But, you know, maybe someday I'll get it in shade 1. If a sale pops up and I don't have too many other things that eclipse it, you know, bronzer is never going to be my biggest priority. So you know, if the stars align, maybe someday I'll get the shade 01, but for now I have this one, and I make this work when I want more of a bronze. When I'm just doing everyday makeup though, I prefer the Pat McGrath. The Hourglass bronzer is a great example of what doesn't work for me. So the first palette I got was the Leopard palette, and this bronzer is so bad on me that I would go without bronzer way before I would ever even consider using this. This is like super yellow, and it makes me look ill. It's very unflattering. I do think that this would work for some people, for sure, but it just really, really, really does not work on me. So, you know, one of the benefits when I got the Jellyfish palette is that this is a cool tone bronzer. This is the only bronzer that I've ever been able to use from Hourglass because they tend to skew more on the yellow side. But this is a lovely bronzer. The reason I don't use it is simply the pan size. You know, my bronzer brushes tend to be larger. They don't fit in here. So because of that, I'm not gonna like go out of my way. It's an okay bronzer. Like, it's a nice bronzer, but it's not so revolutionary that I'm gonna be inconvenienced in order to use it. You know, I do use it when I'm in a hurry and I just wanna use one palette, and you know, there's a finishing powder in there. I can use one palette and be done, but only the Jellyfish palette. I couldn't do it with, I think, almost any of the other Hourglass palettes that include bronzers, because I don't think any of them work for me. But anyway, so I guess I'll get another face palette out of the way. This Nudegasm Charlotte Tilbury, this formula is hard to use. It's a gel hybrid formula, and when I use natural hair brushes, I can get enough of it on my face that it looks nice, but I can't use just any brush. So while I like these colors, you know, I think the contour is decent and the bronzer is decent. I don't like them enough to be inconvenienced. So I keep holding on to this because I like to use it every once in a while, but it goes in the back of my drawer because it's a little bit too annoying to deal with. So, you know, that's one that I'm holding on to that I could probably let go of. And now everything else is going to be decluttered. So I will start with my most recent, which is the Haus Labs. I got this in light level 4. I hate this bronzer. In my head, I hate everything about it. I hate the formula as well as the color, but in reality, maybe I just hate the color. Maybe the formula would be fine. If I had this in a shade that I thought was good, I might feel totally different. But it feels like you're touching velvet or suede. That's what it feels like, suede, like real suede. It's moist. It has like a wetness to it that just kind of grosses me out. And this color, it's too yellow. It's too yellow, and I hate the color. So I don't think it's fair for me to totally judge it based, you know, because I really can't get a feel for what it would be like in a good color. But I dislike this so much that I genuinely won't use it. So I'm gonna give it away. The rest of these are older. So I guess just to get it out of the way, I'll talk about this Makeup Geek Sun-Kissed Bronzer. This is a color thing. This color doesn't show up on me at all. Like at all. It's totally useless to me. And I don't like any of these formulas. When Makeup Geek was having their fire sale, getting rid of everything for like dollars, I tried a bunch of eyeshadows in a bunch of different formulas. I tried blush, bronzer, and highlight, and I dislike all of it. I don't know. If I tried this brand in 2016, maybe I would feel differently, but trying it in 2024, I didn't like any of the formulas, not a single one. So it's time for this to go, and I'm not gonna miss it at all. Then I guess I'll talk about the good old Hula Benefit Hula. This is the original. This is a fine color. This did hard pan on me. The color is very neutral. I think why this was such a home run for people was it worked for such a wide variety of skin tones because of the neutrality. And it's a good bronzer. It looks nice. This box is too annoying. Like, yes, it's a mini. So if I bought the full size, it would be a little bit easier, but it's still in a box. Like, my brushes, I have jumbo bronzer brushes that I like to use sometime. Even with the full size, it's not gonna fit in there without, you know, and my natural hair brushes are very expensive, so I don't wanna be shoving them into boxes like that. Like, I'm sorry, but this stupid brush, like, I don't need that. I've never used that brush, so I don't need it to be stored in there. To me, this was just, the delivery system was too poor to make the product inside worth using. Even though the product inside is definitely decent, it wasn't worth going out of my way for. So I'll be getting rid of that. Another one where the product is just okay, but just okay doesn't cut it, is my Nars Laguna. You know, I got this free with something, who knows? I never pay for any of my Nars blushes or bronzers, but it's a little more yellow leaning. You know, as you can really see how nice and neutral the Hula is in comparison. But yeah, too yellow, don't need it. Like, the formula is okay, but the formula is nothing fabulous. So yeah, I don't need to put up with that, so I don't. I guess next I'll talk about one of my oldest. So this Smashbox, you know, I got this way back in the day, before Bailey Sarian was Bailey Sarian, and she was just talking about makeup. She had recommended this, so I ran out and bought it. It's good, but it doesn't stand out in my collection. I have better, when products like this, when they combine, sometimes, you know, that can work for people if you happen to be the undertones that all of them work for. But for me, it rarely happens that I like all three products, or two, or however many are in the set. So for this, I did like the contour. You know, I think that's a great contour, but I didn't like the bronzer. And I would never use that as a highlighter. It's a little bit hard pan, but you know, the bronzer just didn't do anything for me. So am I gonna reach for this palette just because of the decent contour? No, probably not. So it's just taking up space at this point. You know, that's so similar to the Lorac. Like, I'm not a makeup artist. I can barely do makeup decently, so I'm not using these. You know, plus I have dry skin. So if I'm gonna use shades to lighten parts of my face, I'm gonna use liquids, I'm gonna use liquid concealer, I'm not gonna use powders. So this whole section is a waste on me. And when it comes to, again, this contour is a nice contour. That's a great contour, but these bronzers, well, these, I would argue, these are more neutral than the Smashbox. So yeah, I could use that. I could use that medium contour actually, but I don't reach for the palette because I just don't think about it. I like the Lorac formula. I would say if somebody is just getting into makeup, this could be a great palette to play around with. It's an easygoing formula. You know, it's not gonna be too much, it's not going to get out of hand, so it's not a bad palette to have. It's just not one that I reach for when I have better things. You know, which happens a lot to Carol, unfortunately. 50% off, I don't think you'd be mad if you picked it up, but I would never pay full price. Then I guess I'll talk about my oldest palette. So this is the Trish McEvoy, the highlight and bronze. So this is a good example of a bronzer that has some luminosity to it. Not enough to be detectable necessarily, which I'm okay with. I mean, I don't want my bronzer to have shimmer in it. I especially wouldn't want my contour to have shimmer in it. But luminous is okay. It's nice, it's soft. You know, I think if you're really struggling, this is the highlight. If you're really struggling with dullness and texture, I think Trish McEvoy might be a brand to look into. I think there was a time before I started getting into things like glycolic acid where I did have more of an issue with texture, and that was when I was using Trish McEvoy more. Now it doesn't give me enough. So the highlight is not highlighting enough, and the bronzer is it's just okay. You know, I don't really need a luminous bronzer, so I don't really need any of the products that I got from Trish McEvoy. Unfortunately, I've decluttered all of them at this point. I don't think it's a bad brand. I think if you have certain struggles, I think it could be great, but for what I'm looking for, which is a little bit more, just didn't deliver, but it was nice, you know? This champagne and bronze, it's fine. It's not one that I would buy again. And then my last two are the worst. So this Iconic London sheer bronze. This is, I don't know, it's a color thing, I guess. It's almost like a baby poop color. I don't know. It has like a green undertone. Maybe there is somebody that this would work for. Anytime I tried to use this, it blended away to nothing. Like, it just went away completely when I blended it. It either all went on my brush or it just disappeared. So I couldn't recommend that to anybody. I guess if you have an olive undertone, it might be worth investigating, see what other people, you know, have used it, if they can make it work. It did not work for me, so that will be going. And then finally, I have my Born This Way multi-use sculpting concealer. This was another one where the shade is just like, I have no idea what I was thinking. Like, I actually bought this, but that is super yellow. So these are my worst shade matches. This is in Butterscotch, and yeah, it looks like butterscotch. Yeah, it's not a contour, it's not a bronzer. I don't know what I was thinking with that shade, but this formula sticks more though, so I could see this working as a bronzer if it was in the right shade. That is everything. It's exciting to get through one of these in less than an hour. So, I hope this was helpful. I hope this made some kind of sense. I know I have some more declutters coming up that are a little bit more labor intensive, especially when I get to powder, because I feel like with my dry skin, almost anything will look good initially, but after a couple hours, the truth is revealed. So I want to, well, at least my top powders, I want to be able to talk about that more to try to help anybody out there who has uber dry skin. Blush and bronzer and contour, you know, my dry skin is not problematic with that, but when it comes to a setting powder, that's a different story. So that'll be the next big one, and hopefully highlight won't take too long. I'm supposed to be getting my Danessa Myricks brushes. I'm supposed to be getting them today. More often than not, my mail is late, so it doesn't come the day it's supposed to, even if I get an alert. So we'll see what happens, but that'll probably be my next video, and then I have another empties on its way. So I hope everybody is having a beautiful week, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.